Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here, Jeff Waldorf here with you. On this Friday evening, great show for you guys today. We have, of course, an attack against Nancy Pelosi by Donald Trump. You guys know I'm not a fan of Nancy Pelosi, but this one's gross, and I'm actually going to defend her on it because I'm a good person. So, okay, anyway. We also have Donald Trump's socialism for the farmers. We're going to talk about that. We also have a farmer just going to town on Donald Trump over his ridiculous tariffs and his trade war. So that's fun. Then we've got a conservative blocking a super important piece of legislation that would actually have passed that would have helped people not only in Puerto Rico but also in Texas. And I'm going to explain who that is and why. And then, probably the best story of the day, the Krasenstein brothers have been banned from Twitter. So I've got some interesting thoughts about this. Should be fun, including what should we do to ensure free speech on platforms like Twitter? You're going to love this. Republicans are going to hate it. Heads are going to explode. But I've got an idea. So we'll do that. We'll get to that. A lot of fun. All right. Before we get to that, of course, please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Let me just put these out here. Different ways that you can help the show. Patreon.com/UITNation. And, of course, joining as a channel member. And I'm still working on things that patrons and channel members can get. Right now, of course, patrons get the show full ad-free. So that's kind of cool if you want to go and stream the whole thing. Also continuing to work on getting a podcast version of the show. But, one thing at a time, right? As far as I haven't seen it, any sort of mention of sound. So it would appear that I did absolutely nothing and the sound sounds fine. So I don't know what it was. I don't know what's going on with the sound, but if it works, it works. So I'll take it. All right. Anyway, so let's get into the first story. Let's talk Pelosi. All right. Now, President Trump is getting slammed on Twitter, online, for tweeting out a disgusting attack against House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Now, on Thursday, Trump tweeted out a Fox News segment that covered a doctored video of Pelosi that was basically had her appear to have been slurring her words. Maybe she looked a little drunk. In fact, I want to show you that video, as well as a part of Fox News' Ed Rollins' analysis of that. Let's take a look.
We had a little took a little longer on the floor. Custody of the border. Everyone, he started sending signals to the U.S., Mexico, Canada. If that's not the accurate character, some people call it after NAFTA, some call it NAFTA 2.0, working together to pass that. Not. If we're there are three things. We're very busy people.
Okay, last time I checked, this is 3, not this. It was worse yesterday. We played another clip. She could not put a subject with a predicate in the same sentence. What's going on?
Obviously, I'm 76 years old. She's a couple years older than I am, and we all age a little differently. My sense is she has a very big job. I think she's getting worn down. She always was very neat, very proper. I think she's very inarticulate, which she's never been in the past, and I think to a certain extent she needs to kind of step in the background and not be out front as much, and she shouldn't be the point person leading the Democrats.
Is she speaking?
Okay, so, and of course he asks afterwards, she's speaker in name only, suggesting that people like AOC and some of the more younger progressives, they don't call them that. They say the more radical elements of the Democratic Party are actually running the show. I wish. It would be fantastic if someone like AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, these progressives, Ro Khanna, were actually running the Democratic Party, that would actually mean the Democratic Party would actually win. Okay, again, that's part of my criticisms of Pelosi, is that she's too conservative, is that she's not progressive enough, and in fact, really tries to stop progressives. But anyway, my criticisms aside of Pelosi herself, which ironically I'm supposed to be defending Pelosi, the video, that video is gross. It's actually incredibly ageist for one, and a little bit sexist. Some people, I mean, they just age differently than others. I mean, look at this. There's this old hag right over here. Just can't even put together a sentence. I mean, it's really, really sad. Look, the whole idea was to make her look completely incoherent and not able to lead. Again, that analysis from Ed Rollins. Oh, she's only a couple years older than me, but she looks so worn down. It's a tough job. I guess she just can't hack it. It's super sexist, actually. Oh, she's old, she's losing her faculties, etc. Gross, super gross. And by the way, later on, Fox News, about 3 hours later, I think, Fox News basically released a statement saying that video, by the way, that was false. That is a fake video that has been doctored. You can see it. It's been slowed down in different. It's obvious that it was edited, of course. When you have the same section replayed like 3 times, you know it's been edited, slowed down in different areas. But that's, of course, that's what the right wing does, right? It is actually fake news. But it's a little too late because to the Fox News audience, message received. And of course, who watches Fox News the most? That would be President Donald Trump, who definitely watches that show. Okay, now, here's the thing, right? The video was strike back for basically Pelosi saying that Trump is mentally not there, which, of course, we actually do have a lot of indications that might actually be the case. I mean, who else calls himself a very stable genius? I mean, look, it was a very targeted attack on Nancy Pelosi. And look, again, you guys know me. I'm not a fan of her. But where I go after her for not being progressive enough and fighting against progressive priorities, the right wing will just do the most gross attacks on people. It's not even close, the criticisms, okay? So now after Trump's tweet, which featured this video and read, quote, Pelosi stammers through news conference. He got a lot of pushback on social media, and thank goodness for that. Lynn Erlecker says, even Fox debunked the videos of Nancy Pelosi slurring, yet Trump retweets anyway, knowing they're not real. We don't have a POTUS. We have a POS. That's so good. So good. David Sobel says, Fox News debunked these videos as fake 3 hours ago, but you spread it anyway. You know why? It's because he doesn't care about the truth. And by the way, that is still up. That tweet's still up. That segment's still up. Is he ever going to delete it? No, of course not. He'll never delete that. Now, there are other tweets that point out the hypocrisy by reminding everyone how not smart and not eloquent and how very incoherent the president actually is. Sparky77 says, so many Trump tweets with all kinds of misspellings, grammatical errors, lack of context, etc. It is beyond hypocrisy that he criticizes Nancy Pelosi. That's a good point. That is an incredibly fair point. Anybody remember Covfefe? Anybody remember all the... I mean, he couldn't even spell the word council right. He's got an iPhone that's got a spell checker on there, and he still spells council completely wrong. Not just the different kinds of council. No, he actually spells a word wrong. I mean, that's crazy. And just yesterday, a reporter took a picture of Donald Trump's notes from the Rose Garden that most famously had a misspelling of the word accomplishments. Accomplishments. And I'm sorry, he didn't take the picture yesterday, but it was released yesterday. Not to mention that when he goes off script, he just starts rambling. For example, when he talked about one of the hurricanes, he said, quote, This is a tough hurricane, one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. What does that even mean? On Puerto Rico, he said, quote, "This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water." I mean, come on. And then, of course, there's his famous thoughts on nuclear. In fact, I want to show you video of that.
But you know what irks me? Look, having nuclear, my uncle was a great professor and scientist and engineer, Dr. John Trump at MIT. Good genes, very good genes, okay? Very smart. The Wharton School of Finance, very good, very smart. You know, if you're a conservative Republican, if I were a liberal, if I ran as a liberal Democrat, they would say I'm one of the smartest people anywhere in the world. It's true. But when you're a conservative Republican, they try, do they do a number? That's why I always thought of, went to Wharton, was a good student, went there, did this, built I have to give my credentials all the time because we're at a little disadvantage. But you look at the nuclear deal, the thing that really bothers me, it would have been so easy, and it's not as important as these lives are. Nuclear is so powerful. My uncle explained that to me many, many years ago, the power, and that was 35 years ago. He would explain the power of what's going to happen, and he was right. Who would have thought? But when you look at what's going on with the 4 prisoners, now it used to be 3, now it's 4. But when it was 3, and even now, I would have said, it's all in the messenger. Fellas, and it is fellas because, they haven't figured that the women are smarter right now than the men, so, it's going to take them about another 150 years. But the Persians are great negotiators. The Iranians are great negotiators. So, and they just killed. They just killed us. This is horrible.
Oh, dear God. I'm sorry. No editing needed for that to make him sound completely and utterly incoherent. I did not understand what he was talking about. My uncle, he used to tell me about nuclear before nuclear was nuclear. That is another direct quote. And, quote, he would tell me, there are things that are happening that could be potentially so bad for the world in terms of weaponry. Well, now, wait a minute. He said, what? I think he said 35 years ago, right? Now, we have known nuclear to be very powerful in weapons, or very bad for the world in terms of weaponry since the 1940s, specifically 1945, when we literally dropped a nuclear weapon, 2 of them, on Japan during World War II. We knew how powerful nuclear was, and so, that's really strange that he would say that. It makes no sense, but this is what happens when Donald Trump goes off script. He starts rambling. Oh, I know, but that guys, he's a very stable genius. But there's more. Only the best cover-ups tweets. Oh my God. Trump claims he is an extremely stable genius. Then tweets a fake video of Nancy Pelosi because he saw it on Stable Genius Lou Dobbs' show, where Stable Geniuses Greg Jarrett and Ed Rollins were talking about it. It's the Stable Geniuses leading the Stable Geniuses. So now, can you say that he has a stable of stable geniuses? I know. Terrible. Communist says, Trump stammers through entire presidency. That's one of my favorite. And now, more serious one, Joe Lockhart said, if the media and Twitter do not make Donald Trump pay a high price for this outrageous behavior, then the message is everyone should do it. And eventually, everyone will. It's time for responsible forces to take a stand. Let's start with Jack taking down this tweet. And that's a reference, of course, to Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter. Now, he will not take down that tweet. And newest news on that is Facebook also will not take down the post. So that contains this video. And they said, well, just because it's false or fake doesn't mean that we should take it down. So, and look, I don't really have an opinion on that. But That's just, I mean, that's the facts on that. They will not remove this. They will not take those videos down. And I don't know if they should or not. George Conway, finally, with the last tweet, says, quote, "No one needs to doctor a video to demonstrate just how incoherent Donald Trump is." And there are so many. So many. Windmills cause cancer. There's that. Clean coal. They take the coal out and then they clean it. No, they don't. The man is an idiot. And so all the stuff that he said, if you really want to go down this road and say that somebody is not smart or too old or losing their mental faculties, we can have this fight, and I guarantee we're going to win this one. It's a no-brainer. Okay. Holy crap. All right, so let's get to the trade war. Man. Don't worry, I plan to do the Julian Assange story today, but I did not have time to prepare it. I'll be working on that tomorrow, guys. So I'm seeing it already. It is disturbing, but I will talk about it tomorrow. Okay. Oh, you know what? Tomorrow's Saturday. I cannot do it. I can't do it tomorrow, but I will be doing it next week. All right. Now let's move on. Now, the Trump administration on Thursday announced a new $16 billion worth of farm aid package to offset losses from the U.S. trade war with China. Now, in a conference call with reporters, Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue said that $14.5 billion of the $16 billion would be paid directly to producers who have been hit by Trump's tariff showdowns with China, Mexico, and other countries. Now, the package ensures farmers will not bear the brunt of the trade wars, according to Perdue. Now, look, this trade war, by the way, need I remind you, was started by President Trump. I think that's something that continues to need to be pointed out. Donald Trump started this, and he said, oh, no, trade wars will be really good and easy to win. It turns out, nope, oops. He actually made it so much more difficult for farmers, for small farmers that you say that you're in favor of, to actually get their product or to sell their product. I mean, what did you think was going to happen when you put tariffs on billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods, right? They're going to hit you back. And it just so happened that China was one of the biggest buyers of U.S.-made soybeans. Now, by the way, the tariffs don't cost the Chinese government any money. No. The American people pay that, and it ends up being an effective tax. And then, of course, what happens, you get into trade wars, which continue to hurt people as the costs get passed down to the consumer, to regular Americans. So now the government is propping up an industry, by the way, with federal money now, $16 billion, now $12 billion before, and who knows how much in the future. And this is what happens. You know what they call that? They call that socialism. Socialism for the farmers, who, by the way, a lot of farmers actually more likely to support President Trump. They get the socialism, while everyone else gets rugged individualism. What happened to, having a problem with giveaways? Well, it turns out they love giveaways when it goes to the people that they're going to vote for, that they're going to get votes from. They love those giveaways. They love giving it to, and I don't think that they're small farmers. Most of the ones who are going to get these subsidies, it's actually going to be large agricultural companies. So these large companies, these large corporations are going to get a lot of these subsidies, and the small, normal farmers are not. And of course, that hurts the small farmers who already are at a disadvantage when compared to these larger corporations. Now they're having even more of a disadvantage because of this ridiculous trade war. I mean, I want to give you more information on this aid package from the Hill. According to the Hill, the bulk of the payments will be set aside for row crops such as alfalfa, wheat, and oats, which will be paid at a single rate according to the number of acres planted in each county. More niche crops, including tree nuts, sweet cherries, cranberries, and grapes, will also be eligible, depending on the tariff impacts. Dairy and pork producers also stand to receive relief under that system. And there's an additional $1.4 billion that will be used to purchase surplus food for food banks, schools, and Native American tribes. Now, I'm not saying this entire package is bad. There's good stuff in it. In fact, that last one, that $1.4 billion for food banks, great, fine. But here's the hypocrisy, right? Most of the stuff that helps the general public, like healthcare and education, well, that's considered socialism, that's bad. But the government literally paying farmers because of the effects of Trump's trade war that he started, well, that's not socialism, and that's awesome, right? We can give them money all day. Do you see the disconnect here? Now, obviously, there needs to be something done, obviously, end the trade war. Now, that's not going to solve all the problems. Sure, you end the tariffs, you end the trade war. Well, guess what? China has already signed new agreements with other countries to import their soybeans. So it's not as if it's going to go back to normal now. No, it turns out that now the United States, these farmers are going to have to find new buyers. And so what are we going to do? We're going to continue to subsidize them until they do? This is going to mess things up, or has already messed things up, for a long time to come. That's why you don't get into trade wars without thinking about it first, without having some sort of strategy in place. Now, that said, look, the Chinese have done some shady things. Yes, they do theft of intellectual property. They dump steel. They do things like that. And there are some unfair trade practices that China had done. Nonetheless, starting ridiculous trade wars, look, you don't actually get more fair trade by shooting yourself in the foot. And that's what these tariffs are. And that's, unfortunately, what this whole thing is. It's a disaster from the disaster in chief. And I've got a good example here. Okay. And that is wrong. Okay. Need the video ready. Yep. Now, recently, the founder and president of the National Black Farmers Association, John Boyd Jr., went on CNN to attack Donald Trump in his failed trade war with China. Now, this was during an interview with CNN's Poppy Harlow. And during that interview, he said that he and his farm had actually not received any of the federal assistance money from the president's bailout fund for farmers hurt by the trade war. Now, there was originally one of $12 billion last year, and now there is another one worth about $16 billion that is planned. It's a little bit of socialism for the farmers, but it turns out that a lot of farmers, small farms especially, are not getting this bailout money. It ends up going to some of these larger, mostly larger agricultural corporations. So, wonderful. Now, the thing is that because of this trade war, China now has new trading partners, which means that business is lost. And so Boyd here is going to make the point that even if he got that money, that does not make up for losing that business overseas. And so that's why he's pretty angry and says this.
This administration has failed small-scale farmers, has failed black farmers like myself. I've been reaching out to this administration to talk about the effects of tariffs to my farming operation. And it has a rippling effect. It's going to hurt the timber industry, truckers. All of these people will be affected. So anytime you're losing timber off your farm and you can't get a fair price for your crop, the president says this is going to be a great time to be a farmer. It's the wrong message to send out to the American people, where farmers like myself are suffering at the hands of this administration, and the tariffs have hurt farmers.
That is fairly clear. It is an absolute failure when it comes to small-scale farms, but fantastic if you're a large farmer. See, that's the thing that he didn't understand. If you're a large corporation, then Donald Trump's got your back. You know why? It's because Donald Trump also has large corporations, and so everything he does has to benefit him somehow. And when it comes to, for example, when it comes to these subsidies, right? Well, guess what? A lot of these corporations end up funding Republicans and end up, and people who work there end up supporting people like Donald Trump. And so, again, he wins by giving these farmers socialism. But at the end of the day, it's still not a win. It's definitely not a win for taxpayers who continue to have to pay that. And it's not a win for farmers. Boyd Jr. goes on to say, look, we basically what I don't want these subsidies. Even if I was getting the subsidies, I still don't want them. I want business. I want to actually continue to work and bring my product to market and get a fair price for it. In fact, he said later on, quote, we need to reopen these doors to places like China who were purchasing 90% of U.S. soybeans. And this administration has failed to open up new markets, and that's what's hurting us here. You take away the biggest market and don't open up, the doors for farmers, or new doors for farmers. And that's, look, basically, are you trying to say that not only is this administration favoring large corporate farms, which they are, and not farmers of color, and somehow didn't think to open up new markets for taking a risk and putting tariffs on Chinese goods? No way. No, of course not. Why Donald Trump would never not think of the consequences of doing anything. Everybody knows that he is a very stable genius and that trade wars are good and easy to win. Of course, I'm being facetious there. We know that Donald Trump never thinks about anything. There's no strategy there. He's not smart. And again, now what? What are we going to do? We're going to keep paying these subsidies to the end of time, to the tunes of hundreds of billions of dollars? China already has their new trading partners. They don't need us. American farmers are not getting their business back. They're not just going to quit those new contracts with other countries and other farmers to come back to us. No, that's not going to happen. We've already ruined that. So now what are we going to do? There was no plan ahead of time to figure this one out. With Trump, look, and not only that, but after Trump does this, who's going to want to trade with us now? Knowing that Trump could put in tariffs somewhere else and start more trade wars. Who's going to want to trade with the United States? It's just as part of this alienating allies and trading partners and isolating us from the rest of the world. It is destructive and absolutely ridiculous what Trump is doing. But this is what happens when you elect a clown. You end up getting a circus. We've got to get this moron of morons out of office before he does even more damage. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick break here. We'll come back. We have a Republican blocking a relief bill. And then the Krasenstein brothers. Oh, that's a fun story. So super chats, messages, things like that. I will read those when I return from the break. And until then, we'll see you in a couple minutes around the nation. Welcome back to the show. Around the Nation, right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Okay, so got some great member comments here that I want to read and some super chats. First, let's go to the super chats. Two from Jedi Mullet says, only a very stable genius would be the founder of Trump University. And finally, a more serious thing, way to help the farmers. There are 30 million flex fuel vehicles that can use E85 ethanol. That's grown from corn. All regular fuel-injected vehicles can run up to 50% with no modifications. Byproducts of ethanol production is livestock feed. Help farmers. That's an interesting proposal. I wish someone in the administration had maybe thought of that. And see, that's the big problem, right? So us regular people, we can figure this stuff out, but yet the people at the top are literally clueless. They have no idea what's going on. And they have no idea and no inclination to even learn. Again, Donald Trump is not somebody who's intellectually curious and doesn't actually care about the problem. And right now he's doing, ironically, what conservatives always blame, or I should say, always say Democrats do. It's just throw money at the problem. They're just shoveling money at the problem. Well, guess what? Donald Trump just created this problem with his trade war, and now he's literally throwing money at it because he doesn't know what else to do. It's amazing. All right. So let's go to the member comments here. Starjack says, I can't understand the fact that these farmers who voted for Trump are suffering, yet they are still on Trump's sides, begging for crumbs. Well, it's that same thing, man. I mean, you have people who have been hurt by Republican policies all along that continue to vote for Republican politicians that continue to hurt them. It's the same phenomenon we've seen forever when it comes to Republicans. It doesn't matter. They will continue to be on the side and vote against their own interests. I could speculate as to some of the reasons. Maybe racism plays into it. Maybe it's cultural identity. What you grew up with, what you're taught. We're conservative. We're Republicans. Of course, we've always been Republicans. I've talked to people like that who never gave it a second thought. Of course we're Republicans. We've always been Republicans. What are you talking about? That's just who we are. Yeah, but what about the policies? What policy? What? No, well, Republicans stand for freedom. It's something, I mean, that identity is so ingrained into people that they just don't even realize. There's more messages. Real Life Jolie says, love Jeff's new shirt. I do think it would be even better if you had Help Us Bernie One Sanders, your only hope. Or Bernie Juan Sanders. No. It is, yeah. That would be pretty good. Weirdly enough, I think I got this outside from people selling shirts after a Whitmer rally where Bernie Sanders had come to speak. So I picked up two shirts, hindsight 2020, and this one. It's pretty good for a shirt, I got off the side of the road. So that's kind of cool. LL said, I have a sister who's been on SSID for about 15 plus years and is a Trump supporter. Part of me really hopes they throw off Social Security and Medicare. Be careful what you wish for. It is a possibility. Some of Donald Trump's, and I've talked about this, policy proposals would basically be to slash Medicare and Social Security by hundreds of billions of dollars. So, and a $1.5 trillion cut to Medicaid, by the way. And look, I understand the thought behind it. The idea of like, if you only knew what you were voting for, because look, and I've said this before, it's kind of how Republicans work. They don't realize it until it affects them. And then they're like, oh my God, you're cutting my Social Security? You're cutting my Medicare? No, get your dirty government hands off my Medicare. Not understanding the irony whatsoever. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised because that's exactly what they're gunning for. They want to come for your Medicare. They want to come for your Social Security. They want to come for your Medicaid. And they're not going to stop. And I think these programs, even though there are people that we don't like that benefit from them, that's kind of what a society is. You've got to protect those programs no matter what. No matter what. All right. Zach Sherman, by the way, with another comment, non-member comments, says the problem with it's conservatives the world over, neoliberal policies have sucked all the money out of the middle class, and now people are voting for fake populists because of their bigotry. I think there's a lot in there that is true. Yes, fake populists, they go and they basically take people's biases and division, or they actually create and exploit division, and they say, well, look at those guys. You're economically depressed because of those guys. It's the immigrants, it's the black people, it's the Mexicans. They're coming and stealing your jobs, taking your welfare. How could they be doing both at the same time? I don't know, but that's what they claim. It's Schrodinger's immigrant. And so, yeah, I mean, that's, a lot of people who talk about this don't talk about the causes of basically corporatism, how corporations really have been able and allowed to and encouraged to extract all of the wealth, funnel it towards the top, while leaving the rest of us to fight over what's left. And finally, Eldridge David says, nobody's going to want to trade or make deals with the USA. I wouldn't. All it takes is an airhead like Trump or Bush to be elected to F things up. Too effing unstable and unpredictable. Unfortunately, Eldridge, you're absolutely right. That was the point that I was trying to make. It has just been too unstable. We're basically, and I saw this, I think on a tweet or a meme or something, and it's so incredibly true. America is the Florida of the world. We got all those Florida man stories. Well, that's how the world looks at us, man. The way we look at Florida is really kind of sad. We're the dick of the world. Yikes. All right. And finally, I want to give another super chat shout out to Libertarian Jibber Jabber. Thank you for that donation. I appreciate that. All right. Let's move on. Let's get into the final couple of stories. Again, I appreciate all of that, all of those comments. You guys are great. All right. Moving on. Now, Representative Chip Roy is a member of the conservative House Freedom Caucus, and he just blocked a disaster relief bill that would have helped millions of people. Now, The Hill is reporting that the $19.1 billion disaster aid package, which would have included $900 million in aid to Puerto Rico, in addition to assistance for areas in the United States affected by hurricanes, flooding, earthquakes, and wildfires, was blocked in a unanimous consent vote by Representative Chip Roy. Now, that bill also would have included $4.3 billion that was slated to be allocated towards Hurricane Harvey housing aid to Texas. Now, Representative Chip Roy represents Texas. So that's an interesting choice. And by the way, unanimous consent legislation only requires one person to literally stand up and say, no, I'm not in favor of this, and end up stalling the entire bill. So now, as I pointed out, it's kind of an important piece of legislation, would have helped a lot of people in especially storm-ravaged Puerto Rico, as well as Texas. Why block it? Why block it? Well, of course, Republican politics. Now, Chip Roy told the House, quote, I'm here today primarily because if I do not object, Congress will have passed into law a bill that spends $19 billion of taxpayer money without members of Congress being present in our nation's capital to vote on it. Secondly, and this is what's most important, it's a bill that includes nothing to address the clear national emergency and humanitarian crisis we have at our southern border. You know what that means? The wall. The legislature from Texas blocked $19 billion in aid because Donald Trump didn't get the funding for his stupid wall, despite the fact that Donald Trump said, oh, we'll sign the bill. Isn't that amazing? Again, the bill did not include the $4.5 billion they asked for in border funding, which was requested by the president. But nonetheless, even without that border funding, it passed the Senate in an 85-8 vote on Thursday. And the House GOP leadership said, yes, we will likely pass this bill because it's important, it's disaster relief. Yet, nonetheless, here we have a Republican that decided, I'm going to gum up the works because we didn't get our funding for the wall. He also asked, how do you pay for it? Well, I have an idea. Perhaps if the Republican Party hadn't cut taxes for the rich and corporations to the tunes of over $1.5 trillion over the next 10 years, maybe you could have paid for it. Maybe you could have found some of that money. Again, that's $19 billion. You cut taxes for corporations and the rich by $1.5 trillion. Weird. Maybe if you hadn't done that, you'd have the money. But anyway, now, Roy also argued that the disaster aid bill should have included the border funding, saying that it would have ensured the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Health and Human Services do not run out of money while managing the over 100,000, in his words, illegal aliens being apprehended and the unaccompanied alien minor children being unable to be housed appropriately. The thing about that is, that's a problem that Trump and the Republican Party created. That is a manufactured crisis which a border wall would not solve. Besides, even Donald Trump, who wants the funding for the wall desperately to appease his racist base, was convinced that he should probably sign this, despite promising to not give one penny to Puerto Rico, which, again, the bill, as I said before, includes $900 million in disaster relief for Puerto Rico. He ended up getting convinced by Senate Appropriations Committee Chairman Richard Shelby and Senator David Perdue. But, of course, you have the extremists in the Freedom Caucus, people like Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, along with Chip Roy, who has two first names, and so that really seems to bug me for some reason, making sure that nobody gets help unless they get their funding for ridiculous border wall, right? These people do not serve the greater good. They serve a tiny fraction of the American people who are deeply racist and want a wall. That won't actually work because they hate and are scared of brown people. That's what this is about. Nonetheless, I'm not blaming the majority of Republicans here. Again, I say it's being held up by the minority. Most Republicans supported this piece of legislation, and actually one Republican here, Representative Austin Scott from Georgia, he actually went after Roy, pretty strong terms, for blocking the bill. He said that this was nothing more than political games. Quote, while political games over disaster assistance continue as a member from Texas blocked the package from getting to POTUS's desk today, one thing is clear. This bill has broad support and will advance when the House reconvenes and will be signed into law by the president the first week of June. That's Austin Scott saying it doesn't matter what you do. We're going to pass this. We're going to give people disaster relief. And I got to give him credit for at least doing the right thing. I know that seems strange, but these are strange times where we're actually giving credit for Republicans doing the very least that they can do, which happens to be their job in approving disaster relief. This should not be controversial. This should have went through, and again, by all means, it would have went through had they not set it up with unanimous consent. And Mr. Chip Roy, Mr. I have two first names, deciding to block it for no good reason. And what's sad is that, of course, yes, it will get passed when they come back. I believe it's June 8th that they come back from recess. But until then, the people of Puerto Rico, Texas, California, and other places around the country who are suffering or are still building from disasters, they now have to wait on that extra disaster aid because of nothing more than the extremist Freedom Caucus. I mean, these people are horrible people. that stand for nothing but themselves. Okay. All right. Now let's go to the Krasensteins. This should be fun. Now, recently, Twitter has banned two of the biggest stars of the resistance for apparently breaking the rules. Now, last night, the accounts of Brian and Ed Krasenstein, not to be confused with Klippenstein, were banned from Twitter for life. Now, the Daily Beast wrote that the pair had broken the site's rules about operating fake bot accounts and purchasing fake interactions with their accounts. Oh, now that's fascinating. Now, those of you who are on Twitter, you guys know who the Krasensteins are. Those of you not on Twitter, I'm going to basically explain. They are two very, very big, I would say, grifters, but they're big, basically internet celebrities when it comes to Twitter. So there's some of the first top replies whenever Trump tweets out something dumb. And so a lot of people take a lot of stock in what these people say. Now, let me go to the Daily Beast here. They explain that fake interactions could involve buying bots to retweet their posts or buying fake followers to inflate their profiles on that site. Now, a Twitter spokesperson said in a statement after the banning, quote, "The Twitter rules apply to everyone." And they said specifically, operating multiple fake accounts and purchasing account interactions are strictly prohibited. Engaging in these behaviors will result in permanent suspension from the service, and apparently that's what happened. Now, Will Sommer, writing for the Daily Beast, also adds, the suspensions are a major loss for the Krasensteins, who would use their massive Twitter followers and ability to quickly respond to tweets from Donald Trump to make themselves internet celebrities. Ed Krasenstein had roughly 925,000 followers before he was banned, while Brian had more than 697,000. Now, as I said, they are heroes of the resistance, or at least are considered heroes of the resistance. But in reality, as I'm going to show you, they're actually more like internet grifters. This is somebody like Jacob Wall on the right side, and Michael Avenatti, someone who was another resistance hero that was supposedly on the left. Now, as Matt Taibbi writes for the Rolling Stone, their Twitter ban comes just 3 years after their home was raided by federal agents. So I had never heard about that. Now, the Krasensteins didn't actually get in trouble for this, but what happened is that this was about 2 years after a forfeiture complaint made public the Krasensteins' 13-year history of owning and operating sites pushing Ponzi-like high-yield investment plans, or HYIPs. Authorities said the pair had generated tens of thousands of complaints by victims of these fraudulent high-yield investment plans. So you're literally running Ponzi schemes. So how do you go from Ponzi schemes to becoming internet resistance celebrities? The election of Donald Trump. Of course. Now, why does that matter? What does this have to do with that, right? With the alleged botting? Well, because in the era of Trump, everybody's trying to make a buck. Everybody's trying to be an internet celebrity. And one of the best ways is to either be vocally pro-Trump or vocally anti-Trump. That's kind of the path to stardom. Trust me, it helps. Now, of course, you guys know I don't like Trump personally, right? But more so, I actually hate the conditions that created Trump. And I don't treat Trump as the sole creator of the problem or the sole problem itself. And when you do that, when you do treat Trump as the major only problem, it actually does a disservice to us all because it doesn't actually look at the system. And in reality, it is the system that is broken. It is the system that allowed someone like Donald Trump to thrive. And it's the same system that perpetuates the rise of anti-Trump resistance grifters who take advantage of people without actually trying to fix that system to make everyone's lives better. Now, I actually want to fix the system so we never have another fake populist rise, so that we never have another Trump. If that means that the news becomes suddenly so boring that I lose views and retweets and followers and revenue, so be it. I don't care. I actually want a better country. I don't want to become a celebrity. I've never wanted to become a celebrity. I don't care. I just want a normal country, a functional country, and a functional government. That's it. Now, I want to go back to the beast here. Now, Sommer writes, as heroes of the anti-Trump resistance, the Krasensteins had won admiration from liberals and anger from conservatives for their willingness to tweak Trump and his supporters online. Well, that is absolutely true. The Krasenstein brothers even turned their online fandom into a book featuring a shirtless, muscular special counsel Robert Mueller pursuing Trump. So, look, that's turning your internet stardom into cash. I understand that. I actually don't have an issue making money. At least making money off having, I guess, a following, right? You know what? I guess that's fine if people want to give you money, if you want to write a book, whatever, right? That Bernie Sanders wrote a book. It was wildly successful, and he became a millionaire. I don't have any problem with the acquisition of cash. But what I have a problem with is cheating in order to raise your own profile, right? Buying followers to amplify your message, that's clearly a problem. And not only that, but I also have a problem with not promoting or proposing any sort of solutions to some of these issues, right? Now, again, we all know Trump is bad, right? Orange man bad, right? Okay, fine. How do you fix the system? How do you stop it? And how do you stop the system from creating another Trump? That's what I'm interested in. I'm actually interested in solutions, right? There are no solutions coming from the Krasensteins of the world. Nothing. It's just Trump bad. I'm going to tweak the followers. I'm going to make him look stupid or whatever. Yeah, okay, whatever. That's fun, but ultimately, what does it accomplish? What does it accomplish to really tweak Trump? Again, it's fun to do. I do it. But that's not a solution. Now, earlier, I also mentioned Jacob Wall. And the reason I mentioned Jacob Wall is because of something Taibbi mentioned in his article. Quote, after their Twitter ban this week, the Krasensteins were contacted by Jacob Wall, who reportedly proposed that they all band together to fight Twitter and internet censorship. Now, look, to be fair, I don't know if the Krasensteins took in that offer, right? I don't know. But what's interesting is, of course, Wall wants to get back on the grift, right? And it's actually really amazing to me that he hasn't been arrested for his hijinks. And I've covered some of those before. He literally created and faked death threats on himself and then reported that to police. That's ridiculous. That would get most people arrested. But when you have right-wing privilege, well, then I guess you can do whatever you want. Now, to also be fair, the Krasensteins denied the charges of botting. They said they only operated secondary accounts to monitor death threats, which I'm sure they got plenty, as well as accounts for their businesses. Well, look, if that's true, then that's legitimate, right? None of the accounts, they said, were ever used for manipulative purposes, as Twitter claims. Now, look, I have a secondary account for the show, so I understand, right? And sometimes I will use that account to retweet myself. Is that bot account? I also let somebody else run it too. Christina, which, by the way, Christina's awesome. Thank you for running that account. Super cool. Anyway, that's fine. But when it comes to setting up a bot network, that's not fine. And do you know who else in resistance Twitter was caught botting? Sally Albright. Now, look, for those of you not familiar with Sally Albright, she is a Democratic consultant who backed Hillary Clinton and hated Bernie Sanders. And she still hates Bernie Sanders. She still tweets against him. Whatever, you can have your opinion, right? The problem with her is that, look, last year it was reported by a HuffPost investigation to have been running a network of fake accounts in order to boost her profile online. Well, that's fascinating. Very, very interesting. I wonder if she'll be next. My guess, maybe. That would be assuming that Twitter is consistent. and goes after everyone we know who buys fake followers or uses fake followers and does fake interactions in order to raise their own profile. I don't know. But what would be interesting is what we think that there is somebody who's pretty big on Twitter that also might have a lot of bots and fake followers. He might be the president of the United States. So would Twitter actually go after the president if they found him to have fake followers or bots? Which, look, again, I've talked about some of the studies where up to 60% of Trump's followers might be bots, or at least exhibit bot-like behavior. I don't know. We'll have to see. Now, finally, again, somewhat related to Wall, wanting to work with the Krasensteins to fight censorship online, which is what they're calling this. Well, look, for one, let me be honest. I'm against censorship, right? Now, you had a prominent alt-writer, Jack Posobiec, actually backing the Krasensteins. Now, he said, look, I don't agree with them, but I think this is a free speech issue, so you should bring them back and not actually ban them on Twitter. Now, that's, again, the alt-right position. So far, he is the only right-wing free speech warrior to have actually went on the side of the Krasensteins. So I guess I want to give him credit, even though he's 100% wrong. Because at the end of the day, this is not a free speech issue. And I'm actually really tired of the argument. And here's why. It's not a free speech issue because it doesn't involve the government. Twitter is a private corporation. Facebook is a private corporation. And private corporations do not have to guarantee free speech on their platforms. Now, I wish they did. I really wish they did. But ironically, and this is probably going to blow Jack's mind, if he's ever listening to this or he ever gets wind of this, you know what we could do? We could guarantee free speech online. But we need a little bit of good old-fashioned socialism. Let me explain how this would work. If you were to take Twitter and perhaps regulate it like a public utility, well, then you could use the government power to ensure free speech protections for users. Or if you really want to go radical, you could nationalize some of these platforms, Facebook and Twitter. That would have the effect of extending free speech protections to Twitter users because it would be controlled by the government. And the government could say, well, now you have free speech protections because this is a government-run utility. Has your head exploded yet? Maybe. Now, the only limit to that, of course, would be the same limit we already have on free speech. And, your free speech does not include incitement to violence and direct threats. That is where free speech ends. And that's fine, right? But unless that happens, or some sort of government rule or intervention to guarantee people's free speech and right to free expression on these platforms, these corporations will control access to that platform. And there will be no free speech protections, meaning they can ban whoever they want. Now, I am in favor of free speech, so I'm actually in favor of doing something to change the nature of social media because it is a cultural phenomenon. It is a way to reach massive amounts of people, both Facebook and Twitter or Instagram and whatever. These social media platforms are actually really important, especially when it comes to the realm of politics and political organization. So I'm in favor of those protections. I'm in favor of something different, right? But see, you have to understand if you want to do something about it and protect free speech, you've got to know what you're dealing with. And a lot of people, unfortunately, don't. And we've got to know what we're doing so that we can craft the right kind of solutions. Now, as far as the Krasensteins are concerned, well, they knew the rules under a private corporation. And if it's true that they were botting, then sorry, you get what you deserve. And I don't feel bad for you at all. Okay. All right. So that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me. Please support me on Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation. Please give us a like and a share. Subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be off for Memorial Day, so we'll see you guys on Tuesday. So have a nice long weekend, and we'll see you guys on Tuesday. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you Tuesday. On the 7th.